Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and welcome to a World of Warcraft Rogue Essence Guide video. With a brand new patch 8.2, we're going to be upgrading our Heart of Azeroth to actually store some active as well as passive abilities. Because of this change in patch 8.2, it is going to be very important to figure out which one of these essences unlocked through various content, PvE, PvP, and reputation design, since they're going to be playing a major part in our combat and rotation of each and every spec. I wanted to make a guide on the best essences to look out for every spec of Rogue. The good thing is, most of the rogues share the same exact major active abilities when it comes to essences, where in passives we have a couple different alterations, but every one of these essences is still going to be unique to every single spec in how it functions. So today I'm going to be going over all the essences that you will want to look out for, whether you play Assassination, Outlaw, or Subtlety in patch 8.2. We're going to start this video off with Assassination, and the first essence we'll talk about is Blood of the Enemy. This one is great for any type of content, with a definite exception for massive AoE damage. What this essence does is it increases your chance to crit with abilities, and if you further upgrade this essence to a higher rank, it'll give you 5 seconds of those crit abilities hitting for harder for 5 seconds. The passive crit chance for Assassination is amazing because it plays with the passive Seal Fate, which whenever you use abilities to generate command point, for every time that ability crits, it generates you an extra command point. This is useful for single target to build more command points off of mutilates, or in AoE situations to get full command points off of a small amount of adds easier. Having a higher crit chance also allows your abilities to crit. The more you crit, the more damage you do. When you upgrade this essence to gain the extra damage on your critical strikes, you want to make sure you have Toxic Blade, Exsanguinate combined together with the Vendetta in order to maximize the effective output of your damage. This one for Assassination is very much recommended. The next essence for Assassination that's also fairly powerful is Vision of Perfection. Vision of Perfection has a chance to give you randomly Vendetta on your target from using your abilities, although that Vendetta is going to be shorter in duration, and it also reduces the cooldown of your Vendetta. So far, it's a viable choice for all 3 specs of rogues, especially if you don't want that extra button, and it's extremely powerful primarily in single target fights. Extra Vendetta also benefits from other sources like your Azeroth traits. There's an Azeroth trait called Nothing Personal, which during Vendetta gives you energy every second and deals nature damage to the enemy. So all those Azeroth traits and talents that function with Vendetta also apply when it has a short Vendetta proc. The biggest challenge with Vision of Perfection is it kind of misaligns with your Vanish, so you won't really be able to use Vanish and Vendetta together, whether you want to benefit from the Master Assassin talent or Subterfuge to line up together with Vendetta. So be sure to keep that in mind if you do end up getting Vision of Perfection. The next essence is Focusing Iris, and this one is pretty simple for all 3 specs. This one has incredible amounts of AoE damage that you can cleave through targets. And where you would want to use this essence is primarily in AoE fights, so Mythic Plus or certain raids where AoE is very important. What this essence also does is allows you to maintain a passive haste buff. And this is something you can actually maintain as Assassination even if you cannot stay on the enemy too long, by using throwing knives whenever you are at bay from an enemy. So this is something Assassination can actually keep up fairly well, and haste scales really well for Assass because it works off of poisons, bleeds, as well as energy regeneration. Finally, the last essence that is good for all 3 specs of rogues is Purification Protocol. This one is great in multi-target fights where you'll be sticking on more than one enemy that are close next to one another for a very long time. And I'm seeing this one also on the recommended slot for Mythic Plus dungeons. The actual effect of this essence, it'll call down a light from above to deal damage in a small area on a fairly short cooldown. And your passive proc has a chance to explode fire damage on a main enemy and anybody around them. The further upgrades to this essence also allow it to play some more with aberrations, and you won't see aberrations in Mythic Plus dungeons, so it's not too important, but inside of raid situations there is some use for it. This is a very unique essence. It isn't perfect for everything, but for Assassination, when it comes to a long, sustained fight where enemies are really close together, and if you choose not to go Outlaw, Assassination would benefit from the multi-dot cleave-based playstyle that this offers. For passives, Assassination wants to look for Memory of Lucid Dreams, which gives you a chance for your abilities to refund half the energy spent. With how expensive your Mutilate is, this could give you back quite a lot of energy. Purification Protocol for a passive is not terrible either. It does do a fair amount of damage as a proc. And Unbound Force as a proc is not bad either, especially if you can line up that 100% crit buff that you do have to build up for. For Outlaw Rogue, the essences are going to be exactly the same as they will be for Subtlety, but the way they make a change to your gameplay is going to differ between specs. We'll start out with Blood of the Enemy for Outlaw. Because of the way that Outlaw plays up to crit-based playstyle, the extra crit can be used in any situation and can basically be used on cooldown. If you can't find a moment to use Blade Flurry in a massive AoE burst, then Blood of the Enemy is going to be perfect with a relatively short cooldown, and the way it plays off of crits like Between the Eyes and Pistol Shot procs is absolutely insane and definitely wanted. Then we have Vision of Perfection. And what I love about Vision of Perfection, first of all, it's fairly easy to use, but it also opens up a brand new playstyle for Outlaw Rogues. What this does is a chance to activate Adrenaline Rush. And that means there's abilities like Azeroth traits as well as talents that work off of Adrenaline Rush. For example, the talent of Loaded Dice. Yes, Loaded Dice does trigger from procs of Vision of Perfection. And that means in the future, Outlaw Rogues might be able to play a constant 2-buff playstyle. No longer will you have to finish with RNG of getting that one buff that doesn't increase your damage and feels like a DPS loss. By substituting a little bit more haste on gear, where you would lose 10% from your Alacrity talent, you will instead gain Loaded Dice with extra buffs to play with. This one feels a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to get this one from the Mechagon dungeon. Then we have Essence of the Focusing Iris. Just like Assassination, it is used for any massive high priority AoE burst damage. Although Outlaw already does fairly well in AoE, so most of you guys might want to hold off to using this one. The passive for this one is not that bad either. Haste doesn't really benefit Outlaw tremendously. It does have some uses, where Critical Strike and Versatility generally increase our damage the most, unless for whatever reason we start scaling slightly differently with our gear in this brand new patch. And finally, Purification Protocol is recommended for Mythic Plus dungeons. This one is not terrible, it does have a fairly short cooldown just like Assassination, and because Outlaw does need enemies to stack up together, this one does end up helping you out a lot. The passive of this essence does hit multiple enemies, so you can cleave and proc this off of many enemies. So in a group where you can have, let's say 20 enemies that you're cleaving, let's say 5 of them proc this, that's a lot of AoE damage going out, which is why it is incredibly powerful for Outlaw Rogues. For Outlaw, some of the more powerful passives are going to be Purification Protocol because of the fact that it can cleave on multiple enemies and it does a fair amount of damage, but also the Unbound Force, as well as the Unbound Force passive of the Essence, which has a chance when stacked up to get you 100% crit, and if you can line up that together with Blade Flurry and other procs, you could output quite a hefty amount of damage. When it comes to Subtlety, again, we're going to be talking about same exact essences, but what each essence offers for you in terms of change of playstyle is what's going to be different. Which I guess is a good thing, but also a bad thing, because you're not really getting that much variety between rogue specs. For Subtlety, Blood of the Enemy is going to be a viable option, because if your abilities crit, your hard-hitting abilities that you put out, then the enemy dies faster. Also, once you rank up this ability, that 5 seconds of extra damage from your crits combined together with Symbols of Death as well as other talents that increase your damage output, then this essence will be fundamentally important for massive bursts, whether it's single target or AoE. As this essence really does synergize for the AoE playstyle for sub with Dark Shadow and Secret Technique talents, might make it viable for Mythic Plus dungeons. Vision of Perfection is a solid choice for Subtlety, but after testing it out, I feel like it just doesn't proc as much. It's a great single target if you want extra buttons, and the procs of Shadow Blades are nice. They feature extra combo points as well as extra damage. Although, from hitting the train dummy, I felt like this one doesn't proc nearly as often as it does for Assassination or Outlaw. Although I'm just telling you guys what my experience was with this essence. For the most part, the websites that have tested this do assure that this should have fairly same proc for all 3 specs across the board. Because of how generally lacking Subtlety is in consistent damage output, primarily in the AoE department, Essence of the Focusing Iris, where it's generally recommended for high burst AoE, I would actually recommend that one a fair amount if you are going to be running into fights or dungeons where there's a lot of enemies to burn through. So you can cycle between your big burst AoE, and whenever that's down, you can use the Essence. At range, Subtlety can maintain this with Shuriken Toss, which is really easy for you to get the haste buff, and haste actually is not a terrible stat for Subtlety nowadays, so it's a decent damage output if you were going for the more bursty or sustain-y build playstyle. Finally, Purification Protocol is decent as well, especially for Subtlety rogues. Again, Subtlety's performance hasn't been the greatest in AoE fights, especially in Mythic Plus dungeons. So Purification Protocol proccing off of multiple enemies could give you quite a bit of a standing chance when it comes to AoE damage. Some of the best passives for Subtlety are going to be Memory of the Lucid Dream, that will allow you to play with Night Stalker instead of Shadow Focus. If you get the passive from Memory of the Lucid Dream, you'll be able to have a higher chance to refund a lot of your ability's energy back, allowing you far more damage and a more fun playstyle. You also have Purification Protocol, which is great for the proc, especially in Mythic Plus dungeons, and of course Unbound Force. If you can line up the 100% crit buff guarantee with Symbol's Death and your biggest burst available, maybe even together with something like, I don't know, Blood of the Enemy fully ranked up, this could give you an impressive amount of burst damage out of nowhere for a Subtlety rogue. And that's going to be everything we have right now on essences in BFA for all 3 specs of rogues. You're more than welcome to play around with different essences. There's a lot of fun combinations that you guys may be able to use in the future, but these so far are the top ranked essences for all 3 specs of rogues for the patch 8.2. I'll probably make videos of me trying to combine different essences as I'm getting them and unlocking them little by little. I only have 2 so far on the first day of 8.2. But as the expansion goes on, as we hit into Season 2, as the raid unlocks and the brand new Dungeon of Mechagon unlocks, it'll be a good idea for a lot of you guys to step your foot into the brand new content and try to see if you can unlock as many of these essences as humanly possible. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one in patch 8.2.